Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Redding, how does the Department of Ag intertwine itself with other departments, for example, with chronic waste disease or the spotted lanternfly? This is a big issue where I live, especially with the chronic waste disease, because now my concern is that it's starting to infiltrate itself into the food source. I mean, the deer, it's a big sport in Pennsylvania, deer hunting. So what's the guarantee that one of the deer is not in fact infected? I've spoken with Game Commission, Department of Game and Fisheries. So how do you interact with that, since that's a major part of our food chain?
That's a great question, and I think Dr. Brightbill, if he's still here, he's become our resident expert on CWD and some of the fine negotiations between our Department of Conservation and Natural Resources and the Game Commission and Agriculture. But it's a good reminder that a lot of the issues that we're addressing either directly by way of statutory responsibilities and/or these evolving issues around education or workforce are not solely those of the Department of Agriculture, right? And the CWD is a good example. So, Dr. Brightbill, you want to speak to that issue of interaction with the Game Commission and how we do that?
So we've done a lot of outreach over the past year. We share information, between USDA Wildlife Services, Pennsylvania Game Commission, Pennsylvania Department of Ag. We work together as a team because whether we like it or not, we have a collective deer herd in PA. We have about 23,000 inside the fence, and if you ask PGC, they'd probably say 1.5 million outside the fence. But that said, we have both the herd certified and the herd monitored program that requires testing. And I'm rest assured that we have fairly high confidence we have a very low incidence in our herds. We've tested a total of 27,000 deer since the program started in 1998, and we've only had 44 positive. We recently depopulated our herd in Bedford County that contained, unfortunately, 27 of those deer. We are trying to coordinate some of our regulations so they dovetail with Pennsylvania Game Commission, because whether we like to admit it or not, there are joint risks. High-risk parts, whether they come off a game farm or they come out of a state forest in the DMA, present similar risks. So we're working, in step with, PDFA. We have Glenn Dice here, who's, president of the Pennsylvania Deer Farmers Association, with Pennsylvania Game Commission and USDA Wildlife Services to try to make progress. So, and the last thing I'd like to comment is there's a lot of misinformation out there. There is no evidence, no evidence that CWD poses a human health risk, There's no confirmed cases, that it's ever affected people. I think we need to stick with the facts, and there's a lot of ongoing studies, but at this point, if we scare people into thinking that there is risk that's really not present, it could really have a devastating effect on the entire deer population. And I'd argue that we have a lot of surveillance inside the fence. Deer farmers are doing what they can. What we need to do is work together on an interagency basis so that our regulations are similar to games in regards to high-risk parts. So.
Thank you. That was my point. And if I can just do an addendum. Most of us have to go into the mobile ag units that come to our school systems. Now, usually it's elementary school to start to get their appetite whet for ag. My feeling is let's think about taking it now into the high schools with the guidance departments whose sophomore and junior year saying, looking for a good paying job, come and go through this, because the kids could not get enough of it. They could not, I mean, they would push you out of the way so they could see where the cotton was and to feel the different cloth and fabric and, oh, the seed made this. They loved it. But I think if we want more people to get into the profession, we have to start taking it back then to the high school when they're starting to make up their mind on what they want to pursue in college or higher ed. Just an opinion. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.